Good afternoon, everyone. We are here live for what is day two, perhaps day three of the Robert Tellis murder trial. We're calling it day two because day one was essentially just jury selection. We did not cover that. We covered opening statements, which were yesterday. We also went through, we're going to call it 7.5 witnesses yesterday. The half is going to be because the prosecution did their direct on the eighth witness, and the defense has not yet had the opportunity to cross-examine that witness. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, Jeff, I see you in the room, and I appreciate you coming back. But for those who weren't in the room yesterday, before the court gets started, they haven't quite started yet. Before the court gets started, I'm going to play a news clip of just a recap of what occurred yesterday. So this will give us a brief understanding, a quick understanding of things that you may have missed if you were not with us yesterday.
Day three of the murder trial against disgraced politician Robert Tellis wrapping up within the last hour. Thank you so much for joining us at 6. I'm Ozzie Mora.
And I'm Brian Loftus. He is accused now of killing Review journalist, reporter Jeff Gehrman. 8 News Now investigator Vanessa Murphy closely following this case. Vanessa has the very latest.
Seem to be loading here. Well, we'll come back to that if possible. So for those of you who weren't here yesterday, we did hear from the best witness for the prosecution thus far has been retired Detective Clifford Mogg. Mr. Mogg was an investigator with the police department when the murder actually occurred, and he and his team were responsible for going out and gathering video surveillance footage from a 5-mile radius around the home of the victim. Now, the defendant lives about 5 miles away from the decedent, and in gathering the video surveillance footage, there was quite a bit of footage taken of the assailant's vehicle kind of meandering around the city, entering into the decedent's neighborhood, then leaving the neighborhood, then coming back. There's video surveillance footage of the defendant walking around the victim's neighborhood, and kind of meandering before actually going to the victim's home. Then you see they did share surveillance video from across the street of the assailant kind of lying in wait on the side of the victim's house. At which point, at sometime thereafter, the victim left the garage, exited the home via the garage, went around to the side of the house, and that's where he was attacked by the assailant. Then there's camera footage of the assailant returning to his vehicle, which was parked some distance away. Then there's footage of the vehicle coming to the decedent's home, the assailant exiting the vehicle and going and checking on the deceased, perhaps in an attempt to ensure that the deceased had actually perished in the attack, to ensure that there were no survivors, anybody that could identify the assailant, and then returning to his vehicle and exiting the neighborhood. And then Mr. Mogg showed several clips of a similar vehicle. Now, this entire time, the assailant's vehicle does not have a license plate on it. He then shows video footage of a markedly similar vehicle exiting the decedent's neighborhood and traveling down a path that leads directly to the defendant's house. At one point during that camera footage, a license plate was seen on the vehicle that we assume was still the assailant's vehicle. But what Mr. Mogg was unable to show was the defendant actually entering or leaving the vehicle. He was unable to show what the tag number on the vehicle was, but he did specifically point to a section of the vehicle that was slightly discolored. And the prosecution showed, apparently, based on the conversation that was occurring, apparently showed the jury a picture of the defendant's vehicle that had that same discoloration in that same area. Now, people watching the case live were unable to see exactly which photo was shown to the jury at that time, but assuming that the prosecution was describing something that the jury could actually see, that piece of discoloration on that vehicle was likely pretty good evidence that it was in fact the defendant's vehicle that the assailant was driving. So given that particular piece of evidence, assuming that it did exist, there is at least the vehicle kind of tying the defendant to this particular crime. Now, they also introduced a lot of photographic evidence of what was obtained from the defendant's home that also kind of ties the defendant to this particular crime. The assailant was wearing a large straw hat. A cut up straw hat that was markedly similar to the one the assailant was wearing was found in his home when the police conducted a search warrant. There was a pair of shoes, a gray Nikes, that the assailant was wearing at the time of the attack. A markedly similar pair of shoes that had been partially destroyed were found at the defendant's home. And finally, the assailant was carrying a duffel bag, a gray and blackish duffel bag, and a markedly similar duffel bag was found at the defendant's home. So two pieces of evidence were in some state of disrepair. The defendant, if these were his items, had actually begun destroying these two particular items. Now, the defense seems to be basing their case around a conspiracy theory that the police investigating this crime are trying to frame Mr. Tellis. So in questioning the witnesses on cross-examination, the defense attorney was essentially trying to show that the crime scene investigators and the people taking photographs of this evidence that was obtained during the search of Mr. Tellis's home planted the evidence. The crime scene investigators never saw these items until one of the investigators, who he's likely going to allege were involved in this conspiracy, until those investigators pointed out those specific pieces of evidence to the crime scene investigators. They did get one of the crime scene investigators to state that the execution of the search warrant was a chaotic event, and that there were a whole lot of people coming and going from Mr. Tellis's home, and that she was unable to keep tabs on everyone. Now, we're talking about a 4-bedroom, 2-story home. So the idea that any one individual would be able to keep tabs on everyone who's coming and going, when obviously multiple police officers have to go into a home of that size in order to conduct a search and optimize their time with respect to searching a person's dwelling, is pretty preposterous. But could it create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury? Perhaps. So we'll see. I'm expecting that we're going to begin today with the cross-examination of the final witness from yesterday. And then there are probably going to be somewhere between 7 and 13 additional witnesses for the prosecution. So we likely won't get through the prosecution's case in chief today. Thus far, what the prosecution has demonstrated is that whoever the assailant was premeditated this crime. I mean, the video surveillance footage showing this vehicle traversing the neighborhood, showing the assailant meandering around the neighborhood on foot, and then showing the assailant lying in wait for the victim outside of his home, establishes essential elements of the crimes with which the defendant is being charged. We do, based on opening statements and some of the witnesses, have some things that tie Mr. Tellis to this particular crime. So far, not all of the things that we know that the prosecution has been introduced into evidence. The only actual things that have been introduced into evidence are pictures and surveillance footage. The surveillance footage is really all that we have that ties the vehicle to Mr. Tellis. Mr. Tellis's wife is the registered owner of a reddish colored Yukon Denali, and the assailant was driving a reddish colored Yukon Denali at the time that the attack took place. Now, we don't have in evidence yet this cut up straw hat. We don't have in evidence the shoes or the duffel bag. So there are some things missing from evidence, but we do have photographic evidence of those items. The police officers who actually obtained those items haven't taken the stand yet. So the prosecution has yet to be able to establish the chain of custody and things of that nature that are necessary to actually introduce those items into evidence. So we will see if those officers take the stand today. As I noted yesterday, juries they place a lot of trust typically in uniformed individuals. So if you are a member of the armed forces or a firefighter or a police officer, when you take the stand, typically the person who is asking you to take the stand, whoever you're taking the stand on behalf of, will ask you to appear in your uniform because that creates a sense of trust between the person on the stand, the witness, and the jury. So I do expect that whatever officers take the stand, they will have on their uniforms. That is by design. And perhaps even watching from home, we would tend to trust officers more than we would perhaps trust an ordinary lay person who happened to take the witness stand. Now, I also need to point out that one of the reasons that I'm covering this trial, this is the first trial that I'm covering. One of the reasons that I'm covering this trial is one, because the defendant has expressed a strong desire to take the stand in his own defense. And I'd love to see that. And I'd love to be here covering it when he does it. And two, because this is an attorney. He's been in court before, typically in small claims actions and in probate actions, never anything like this, but he has been an attorney appearing before judges in the past. In his role as the public administrator for Clark County, Nevada, I believe he has to be an attorney in order to assume that role. He has since lost the election, his re-election campaign to remain in that role. And I believe he's also suspended from the practice of law in the state of Nevada. But he is an attorney, so I do want to see if he takes the stand. And it looks like the court is getting started here. So let's turn everything over to the court.
We're going to re-swear you in, okay? You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Clifford, C-L-I-F-F-O-R-D, Mogg, M-O-G-G.
Thank you. Good morning, Detective Mogg.
Morning, Mr.
And this is the
President.
witness from
Stop
yesterday.
right there. It's obviously not a detective. I know old habits die hard. You've since retired, and now you're a private investigator.
I'm not a private investigator, I'm a
Private
consultant.
consultant.
Correct.
Fair. All right. Turning your attention to your testimony at the end of yesterday, the locations of interest, and this was your slide that I'm referring to. I believe it's slide 7. You were primarily focused on this 5.3-mile trip, give or take, between Mr. Garman's residence and the residence belonging to Mr. Tellis, correct?
That's an approximation.
Okay. How many neighborhoods or designated neighborhoods are within, just along this route, this 5.3-mile distance?
Numerous.
Fair to say hundreds.
I wouldn't know if it was hundreds, but there's numerous.
You had given testimony towards the end of the day yesterday that you had driven through Mr. Tellis's neighborhood, correct?
I did.
Looking for another Denali?
Examining the area, looking for vehicles, correct.
And what other vehicles would you be looking for other than a red Denali?
We were advised that Mr. Tejas also had 2 other vehicles. I believe one is a BMW, the other one was a Tesla. And so we drove the area. I believe at the time that I drove through, I can't recall if both the BMW, the Tesla, and the Tahoe were at his residence or not, but those were the vehicles we knew that he had access to.
Okay, and in reference to this 5.3-mile route, which you had reviewed approximately 20 cameras on, did you review that route for the BMW?
No, we did not.
Did you review that route for the Tesla?
We did not.
So then back to Mr. Tellis's neighborhood. You'd agree with me that when you drove through Mr. Tellis's neighborhood, you were looking for a red Denali similar to his?
I was looking for all the vehicles that were registered to him.
Approximately how many houses were in his specific neighborhood?
Oh, rough guess, maybe 100-ish. It's kind of a looped neighborhood.
Do you recall the name of the neighborhood?
I do not.
Do you recall the subdivision to which this neighborhood belonged?
I can't recall off the top of my head the name of the subdivision.
Do you recall whether or not it was in, let's say, Lake Las Vegas, Piccoli Ranch, Summerlin?
Elegant and enticing, sophisticated.
HOAs that had
Court TV's got to make their money.
over this neighborhood.
I'm not.
You had given testimony concerning, and I'll flip through so we can all see. It's your slide 15. (9:10), and you had given testimony yesterday at about 4:12 p.m. that you had seen this red Denali entering this area near where Mr. Tellis lived, correct?
At approximately 9:10 in the morning, that's correct.
And just so we're clear, at 9:10 from this camera that it was 9601 Red Hills Drive, basically the Piggott Elementary School, you saw the Denali arriving in the neighborhood, not specifically to Mr. Tellis's house, but the area, correct?
It drove into the neighborhood where Mr. Tejas lives.
And he was arriving, assuming, and you know, that's again too, we don't know who was driving, do we?
That's correct.
Throughout your testimony yesterday, you repeatedly said he, the driver, he. We don't know, all things being you, whether it was a he or a she, do we?
I'm fairly confident it was a male.
Okay, but you didn't know, you don't know. You can't testify today whether it was a male or a female, can you?
Not positively.
But back to this arrival, whoever's driving this Denali at 9:10:18 DVR time on September 2nd, 2022, do you know where that Denali was arriving from, or where its place of origin is from?
Well, I looked at phone records from Mr. Tejas, and I know that earlier in the morning, previous to 9:10, he was down in the area of, I believe it was Desert Inn and Durango. There's a school down there in that neighborhood.
Okay. But again, not based upon any captures from any ring cams, school cams, gas station cams. That's based upon his cell phone data, correct?
That's correct. The camera at his residence did not record, and there wasn't anything on the ring camera of evidentiary value.
And we'll get to that, but just so we're clear though, as far as where this vehicle was, we don't know, do we? We have no records concerning that red Denali prior to 9:10 a.m.
That's correct.
We don't know the location of this red Denali on September 1st, the day before, do we?
I do not.
And we don't know the location of this red Denali following, let's say, 9/3, do we?
I believe there were surveillance units set up on that vehicle at some point after 9/2, but I don't recall the exact date.
Let me ask you this. Are you aware of Mr. Tellis being under surveillance prior to this date in question, September 2nd, 2022?
No.
At this point in time, you worked with the homicide unit?
That's correct.
So you were unaware of what other involvement, if any other units may have had concerning details concerning Mr. Tellis?
I know there were other units in the Metropolitan Police Department that were involved in an investigation concerning Mr. Tejas, but I don't know the details concerning that investigation.
Are you aware of a surveillance detail that had been focused on Mr. Tellis on the days preceding this killing of Mr. Garum?
I am not.
Are you aware that he was subject to surveillance on the day of this killing of Mr. Garing?
I am not.
The next slide I'd like you to turn your attention to is, let's see, we'll go here. It's at 9:12. This is where you discussed roughly the same time Mr. Gehrman is leaving the taco shop. Again, you'd said that the time was wrong in this, correct?
That's correct. The clock time on the DVR is wrong. I believe this is, I'd have to go back and look at the previous slide, but probably somewhere around 9:14 in the morning.
Okay, and you were shown a receipt by Mr. Hamner concerning a receipt.
I don't think I was shown a receipt.
Okay, was there any discussion with you and Mr. Hamner concerning your receipt from Roberto's Taco Shop on the morning in question
No, I know that one existed. That's how we ended up going there. That was found during a search of Mr. Gurman's residence. And so that's one of the reasons that we went to the taco shop, is to follow up on the time of that receipt. And I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the time on the receipt was about 9:04.
And are you aware of that receipt and the timestamp on the receipt being accurate, or is it just an assumption that it was?
Based on the adjusted time on the DVR, I think the time was pretty accurate, but I can't testify that it absolutely was accurate.
All right. Now moving on. This is a 9/12/32. This is from the same 906 Red Hills Drive, the Piggott Elementary, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony yesterday was at this time we see this Denali leaving this area, correct?
Yes, sir.
But just so we're clear, the last point of either seeing this vehicle arriving or leaving, this is about as close as we get to the Tellis residence, correct?
It is.
But still, we have a distance, don't we? I mean, it's not right around the corner, but I mean, there's a distance between this camera and Mr. Tellis's home.
Where I lose track of the Denali as it heads north, it's right around the corner from Mr. Tejas' residence.
And, you know, since we're on the subject, I'll just address this right now. This surveillance camera, the ring camera at Mr. Tellis's home, security cameras. It's your testimony that you could not find any video from that day, correct?
That's correct. If any video would have been recovered, it would have been provided to me so that I could have used it in my PowerPoint. I know that detectives at the scene who were executing the search warrant there, in addition to myself, requested that our digital forensics lab come out and examine the DVR. I don't know what the results of that examination are.
So you're not able to give testimony whether it was cloud-based or not?
I am not.
So from yesterday's video surveillance and the PowerPoint that he put on, if I remember correctly, the Peugeot Elementary School video cam footage shows the red vehicle turn down a street that leads to Mr. Tellis's home, but that street that it turns on it appeared to be the only entrance or exit from that small little subdivision that Mr. Tellis lives in. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. If you all remember from yesterday, let me know in the comments. But we'll keep going here.
You're not aware of whether the passcode had been given to it and followed through?
All I know is that the digital forensics detectives came out, and they're the ones that examined the system.
So they would know in reference to that system versus you, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And you're not aware of when any security system may have been installed, whether it was the day before on the Tellis residence, are you?
I am not.
Are you aware of any other neighbors of Mr. Tellis who had been spoken to concerning their ring cameras or their security systems that could have gotten you closer to the Tellis home?
I am aware that other detectives canvassed the area for surveillance video, and I don't believe we were able to locate any.
But you can't say for certain, can you?
Well, I can say that if video would have been recovered, it would have been given to me to be used as part of the PowerPoint that I created.
But again, and just so we're clear, and if I may approach this screen, I mean, we've got the Piggott Elementary School here. That's where the green pen is, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we have the Tellis home up here, a ways away on the other side of Spanish Steps, correct?
Correct.
So you said it was right around the corner, but it's actually really not. You'd have to leave Piggott Elementary School, come over here on Red Hills, drive up Red Hills, let's see, Silk Tassel, hit Spanish Steps. And from this picture, we can't really see, but we don't really have the entrance to Mr. Tellis's neighborhood captured, do we?
So where I lose track of the Denali is about 6 houses south of the intersection, and then right around the corner to Mr. Tejas' residence.
Would you agree with me, just based upon this capture, and this presumably is from a satellite?
The picture of this?
Yes.
Yes, it's Google Earth.
We've got quite a few homes. We've got that silk tassel drive. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on one side, 6 on the other. Then we have Spanish steps. We have homes on each side. There's a lot of homes there, isn't there, that could have security cameras?
There were, but not every home has security cameras, and just because you have a camera doesn't mean that it captures anything.
Kind of like in the instance of Mr. Tellis's home. Just because there's a camera, that doesn't mean anything was captured, correct?
That's correct.
But fair to say, we do have several homes between this Piggott vantage point and the Tellis home.
There are several, yes.
You had given testimony concerning seeing a red Denali drive by from a certain vantage point, and you weren't able to see whether or not it had a plate, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall which capture you were referring to?
I believe that was from 1405 Wintergreen, and there was no plate visible on the back of the truck at the time that it drove northbound on Wintergreen.
And what time was that?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Would referring to your notes or your slide preparation refresh your recollection?
If you want to back out of this and go to the PowerPoint itself, and then I have to scroll down to the slides.
Okay, I'll do this. We'll go through it together.
So it's that angle.
Right here?
No, not this, but it's this angle from 1405 Wintergreen.
Not that one?
No, sir.
That's Mr. Tellis. I'm sorry, that's Mr. Gehrman. Let's see. And you know, since we're here in the interest of time, let's address this. You were asked, did something jump out at you? Recall that line of questioning yesterday?
Correct.
And you were shown this in State's Exhibit 317. Mr. Hamner had shown this to the jury, correct?
Yes.
We have a visor down in the summertime on a vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
And you'd said there was something telling, something very characteristic about this capture, correct?
There's one of them, yes.
And we'll get to the other matters, but you said something here on the front just showed you that this must be the same vehicle or similar to the vehicle, correct?
It stood out to me as something that was similar on both the suspect's vehicle and on Mr. Tejas' vehicle.
And if I can show you what's been admitted and shown, published, State's Exhibit 317.
Yes.
Let me approach, this was it, correct?
That's correct.
And you said in your testimonies that there's something here that matches something there concerning this light colored area?
Correct. It's just something that drew my attention on both vehicles. And it's a faded area on the plastic of the left front of the Denali.
But then again, this faded area, the sun's reflecting off of it, isn't it?
I don't believe the sun was reflecting off of that.
I would submit that the exhibit will speak for itself. If I told you that it is, do you have any reason to disagree with me?
That the sun is reflecting off of that?
Yes.
I would.
Okay, well, obviously, too, we'll let those that are the ultimate determiners of fact to determine that.
So the way the attorney is posing these questions, he's essentially testifying to the jury in a permissible fashion. He's giving the jury something to think about while they are reviewing these exhibits when they are back in deliberation. So he's basically saying, hey, jury, consider that the possibility that what you're seeing here isn't a light colored section of the car. It's actually just a reflection of the sun and the refraction of the light as it hits the vehicle. So this is testimonial in nature. He doesn't care what the witness answers at this point.
There was other testimony concerning things jumping out at you. The rims on the Denali.
Correct.
These are stock rims, aren't they?
They are.
The tinting in the front, lighter tinting in the front, darker tinting in the back. Something else?
That's correct, when you take everything into consideration.
But that's a standard feature, is it not? The front windows are generally not tinted and the backs are.
That's not true.
Have you done research concerning the 2007 Denali?
I've seen Denalis. I've seen tinted windows in the front, tinted windows all the way around, no tint all the way around, some windows tinted, some windows not. It runs the gamut. It depends on the owner of the vehicle and whether or not you want to tint your windows.
Have you done any research in reference to like Car Guru or CarMax, Google, concerning 2007 Denalis, what they look like? Fairly similar to this one.
Similar, yes.
They all have Denali on the side like this Denali has, correct?
They do.
Now moving forward, please stop me when we come to the capture, I think was the word used, in reference to the license plate.
So if you play this clip,
Okay,
stop.
right there.
Yes.
All right. Oh,
That's on cornflower. That's another angle where you do not see a license plate on the rear of the vehicle.
okay. And this is at 1042, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is some distance from the Telus home, correct?
It's about a block.
Now let's hit that. About a block from the Telus home?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's about a block from Mr. Gehrman's residence.
Okay.
It's roughly 5.3 miles from Mr. Tejas' residence.
All right. So we've got a red Denali, about an hour and 30 minutes away from the other Denali that's captured at Piggott, that's some distance away from the Telus home, correct?
I believe this time is correct. You'd have to go to the slide before for me to confirm that. It is.
Okay. So again, about an hour and a half.
Correct.
We've got a 5.3 mile stretch. And you'll agree with me that we don't have continuous coverage, do we? We have 20 spots, give or take, over a 5.3 mile area. Fair to say?
That's correct. Again, some houses had video, some didn't. Some captured the vehicle, some didn't. Some weren't recording, some were.
And it's your testimony that this capture is at 1042, correct? Give or take, assuming it's accurate.
Yes, sir.
And I'll go forward now to 1405 Winter Green.
So I believe that one also shows that there was no plate on the back of the vehicle.
Okay, and this is 17 minutes after the last one?
Yes, correct.
And this is all in the area of Mr. Gehrman's home, correct?
This is on Wintergreen, about 30 feet north of Bronze Circle where Mr. Gehrman lived.
So we've got all this time that's transpired, correct?
Minutes.
Well, if we go from 1042 to 1101, I mean, we've got some time. Almost 20 minutes.
That's also the suspect out walking around the area.
Okay, we've got 20 minutes that we've gone by, correct?
Sure.
Fair to say that this video window that we've been looking at begins at about 9:10, correct? Concerning the Denali. I won't say it's Mr. Tellis' Denali, but a Denali, correct?
That's correct.
And one of the latter slides that we look at, it's about 11:50, isn't it?
Approximately, yes,
That's a fair amount of time, correct?
it is.
Turning your attention to a Denali, a red Denali. Did you receive information that there was about 67 red Denalis in the Vegas area?
There's actually more than that. We had an initial listing, I believe, over 100. Of that 100, one of the Denalis listed on there was registered at Mr. Teaz's residence to his wife, Mary. We further narrowed that list down to red Yukons. The first list was 07 to 14 Yukons. The next list that we narrowed down was 07 to 2014 red Yukons. Again, Mr. Teaz's wife, Mary, at his address was listed on that list. We narrowed it down even further then to red Denalis. And again, Mr. Teaz's wife, Mary, at his address was listed as an owner of that vehicle. We even searched advanced license plate readers, and Mr. Teaz's vehicle was photographed by an advanced license plate reader vehicle at his residence, bearing a license plate, a Nevada commemorative plate. I believe it was 944 Adam.
Okay, and when was this?
I don't know what the exact date was, but I could get it.
Okay, so you don't have it today. I mean, I appreciate you laying out for us the steps of this investigation, but when was this capture done? When was this? Please, tell us.
I could get it for you.
Okay. Have you given it to the state?
I believe everybody has the license plate reader information.
We don't know when, the origin? I mean, as you sit here today, and trust me, it's not a test, but I mean, you don't have it with you.
I do have it with me. I just don't know that my computer is going to work in here.
Okay, fair enough. Fair to say, though, there's more than one Denali, and we're talking about a 5.3-mile area that you were focusing on, correct?
There is more than one Denali in the Clark County Valley.
At no point in time, and you'd agree with me that it's your theory, but at no point in time do we have any capture of a red Denali parked and there's a license plate being either removed or put upon it, correct?
There's not.
Most of the captures that we have of this red Denali, you don't really see a plate one way or the other, do you?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
You don't see the plate as it's traveling around Mr. Gurman's neighborhood. Once it goes down Washington, you can tell that there's something on the back of the vehicle that was not there before.
And if you could direct our attention to which slide specifically you're referring to.
Yes, if you can pull up the one that's on Washington.
Okay, so it's forward from this, looking at the time.
Correct. It's near the end.
The one that's taken from the gas station.
No.
Okay.
The one that's taken from the backyard of a residence that backs up to Washington. And then also from the Winco Foods on Washington.
Okay. Please tell me when I should stop.
Right there. So where the red box was, if you look, you can see white and darker. And I believe that is the commemorative license plate that was on the back of the vehicle.
But that's as good as we get. You're saying that that's the one that belongs to the Telus residence, but that's it. You're drawing this conclusion based upon this image.
Oh, no. I was present for the execution of a search warrant at Mr. Tejas' residence, where several items of evidence were recovered that absolutely confirmed my belief that Mr. Tejas' vehicle was the one used in the commission of Jeffrey Gurman's murder.
And we understand that, and we understand your point of view in reference to this, but concerning this vehicle, this capture at 11:35, at 11:35 Sunspot Street at 11:35 in the morning, you're basing this conclusion concerning this commemorative plate, and that this is the vehicle based upon that image.
What I'm saying is that when the vehicle was last photographed at 7200 Periwinkle, as it turned west onto Vegas Drive, the next video that I have, or the next capture I have of the vehicle, is as it travels westbound on Washington from Tenaya. And at that point, it appears to me that there's a license plate on the vehicle.
So you're saying there's a better image of the plate capture than this concerning these putting onto the plate than this what we're looking at?
There is no image of the license plate being put back on the vehicle.
But I'm asking concerning the image of the plate.
If you go to the next one, I believe from Winco Foods, and again, you can look at the back of that. Now you can clearly see that there is a white area on the rear lift gate.
And that's the commemorative plate that you've testified concerning.
The previous one is what I thought it was, just based on the color scheme, what it looked like.
You see something there, and that's this commemorative plate that you're sure belongs to the Telus vehicle.
No, in this video or in this clip, all I'm saying is now it appears that there is a license plate on the vehicle.
And in reference to the license plate that you're testifying is on this vehicle, you can't tell what kind of plate it is.
You cannot.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, so here's what I want to hear from on redirect. So this is the time when the prosecution gets to get up and ask some more questions of this witness. I want to know, there's these 67 red Yukon Denali's in the Clark County Valley. Now, the defense attorney was trying to essentially get this witness to say, look, there's all these Denali's and you all didn't do anything to whittle down this number. And what I want the prosecution to get back up and do is say, okay, of those Denali's, not all of them had factory rims. Is that correct? Of course. Not all of them had tinted windows in the back and no tint in the front, correct? Correct. And not all of them, not even a majority or likely any number of them had a distinctive discoloration below the windshield. Is that correct? Yes. So basically remind the jurors that these are that even though there's 67 of these vehicles somewhere in the Clark County Valley, they don't all look the same, like the defense attorney was trying to get them to get this witness to say. But let's see what she does. Based on that example, we have no further.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. Can you step down and you're excused from your subpoena? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Sure.
Can I still go here?
Can the witness still leave?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So it looks like they're doing a sidebar of some sort. I don't know if there's going to be a redirect here. So what we got out of this cross-examination is that they were only looking for vehicles. They were looking for vehicles associated with the defendant, but they didn't review the route for the Tesla or BMW. Now, I don't know what the defense is trying to get at with respect to the Tesla or the BMW. So let's assume, without deciding, that Mr. Tellis was out gallivanting around the town in his Tesla or in his BMW during this stretch where we see this red Yukon Denali. Well, one of the defense's theories of the case is that he was at home the whole time. So what does it matter if we looked for his BMW or his Tesla? He shouldn't have been out on the streets with it because his phone was at home. Let's keep going here.
Until 1 o'clock. And so during this recess, you're admonished not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or means of communication, or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do research, consult dictionaries, the internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own, or form or express any opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you. Thank you. You go with the officer of the court, and we will be in recess.
Thank you. All right, for next hearing, please.
All right, so I don't know how long this recess is going to last, but we will stick around. Court TV usually puts up some kind of notification as to how long they expect the recess to last. But until we're actually behind a little bit. Let's see if there's anything, if we fast forward here. Oh, nope, they are on lunch break. It looks like they will resume at 4 p.m. So this, I guess, AM session for, if you're in Nevada, is over. So I will be back on in about an hour. But before I leave, let's go back over what the cross-examination was able to get out. So no point in looking for the Tesla or the BMW. And he did allude to, even though the witness didn't know about it, he did allude to Tellis being subject to surveillance on the date of death. Now, it sounds like the defense attorney is going to keep coming back to Tellis having been under surveillance. Now, surveillance runs a gamut of possible ways it can be conducted. So I want to know from one of these officers or somebody how exactly he was being surveilled on the date that Mr. Gehrman was murdered. So was somebody sitting outside of his house, watching him? If that's the case, then we know whether he did it or not, or at least the police do. But if all the surveillance means is that they essentially had the track and trace on his phone just so that they could monitor his movements as long as he took his phone with him, then surveillance doesn't really mean what he's trying to put in the minds of the jurors. So as long as he keeps using this word surveillance, the jurors are going to keep associating surveillance with somebody physically watching you. And it's not until somebody actually testifies about that, if they ever do, that the jury's mind is going to disassociate it with somebody actually watching you and associate it with what actually surveillance means in this particular instance. So to that extent, the defense attorney is doing a good job of painting a picture in the minds of the jury. We'll see if the prosecution is able to kind of come back to that and change that image in the minds of the viewers. But for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I'm going to try to go back to that clip from the newsreel that kind of shows what happened yesterday, so that you all can get a good understanding of where we are in this case. So if you give me one moment, I'll try to pull that up and get that on the screen for you. Can you all hear this stream? All right, so it looks like we are having trouble with the volume here. So I'm gonna take that off. We kind of went over pretty much everything that happened with respect to the trial yesterday. But there is one other thing that I tried to show everybody yesterday, or gave you all a link to yesterday, and that's going to be the 911 call that Mr. Tellis's wife initiated uh, to police officers, alleging that Mr. Tellis had committed some type of violent acts, I would assume, against her. So I'm going to try to play the footage of essentially his response to the police officers, just so we can kind of get a little preview of what a testimony from Mr. Tellis might look like. So hopefully we can get the volume working on this particular clip, and let's see how that works out.
We're learning more about a previous arrest of Robert Tellis. This is body cam footage of a 2020 domestic violence arrest.
This is my home. I haven't hurt anybody.
The Clark County Public Administrator is behind bars facing a murder charge for the fatal stabbing of Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Jeff Gehrman.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
Yes, hi. Can you please send somebody here? My husband is going crazy.
This 911 call is from the 2020 domestic violence arrest of Robert Tellis. You can hear his worried wife.
He just won't leave us alone. He had too much to drink tonight, and it's just worse. Me and my kids are scared.
The operator asked if anyone was hurt.
Have you been hit or pushed, ma'am?
Well, he tried to hurt me, but it's fine. He hasn't touched me since.
Channel 13 also obtained the police body cam footage from that same night. This is video from when police arrived to the Clark County Public Administrator's Piccoli Ranch home.
Who did I hit?
You can hear Tellis arguing with police.
You just want to take me down because I'm a public official. I did not touch.
So let's bear in mind that his wife did say during the video that, during the call, that Mr. Tellis was drunk during this encounter. And Mr. Tellis has said after the fact that he no longer drinks. So whether this is a good representation of a sober Mr. Tellis is arguable, but we can see what a drunk Mr. Tellis does when encountered by police officers and essentially by authority figures. And we might be able to glean how he might respond to cross-examination by a prosecutor, someone who, at least in the courtroom, is in a position of greater authority than Mr. Tellis will be.
Touch anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. I am just being approached, and but you guys want to take me down because I'm a public official. That's it. I'm a public official. I'm sure your supervisors will.
So he's alleging here in his drunken state that the police officers are just trying to take him down because he's a public official. Now, remember, in opening statements, the defense attorney essentially alluded to the police department just bringing this action and likely planting this evidence and trying to frame Mr. Tellis because he was in a position of authority. So this has been a theme of Mr. Tellis since at least 2020, 2 years before the murder took place.
I love to see this bloody damage when they see it.
Tellis repeatedly told police he was being, quote, taken down because of his public position, even asking the officer to call an official at the Clark County Detention Center to vouch for him at one point, and continued to deny he had done anything wrong.
I am a public official. I am not stupid enough to do any of that.
In the video, you can hear police say they spoke with family who said Tellis allegedly choked his wife.
There is sufficient evidence to book me right now. There is sufficient evidence to book you right now, yes. You're very certain about that? I am very certain about that.
Tellis was booked that night on domestic violence, battery, and resisting arrest. He later negotiated a dismissal of the domestic violence charge. As for resisting arrest, he got a suspended jail sentence in lieu of taking a behavior modification class.
A few years ago,
Tellis is in jail again, and he will be back in court Tuesday to face a murder charge in connection with the killing of Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Jeff Gehrman.
All right, so again, he was drunk, and you can't necessarily use that as an indication of his normal behavior, but it begs the question, is his theory of this case really just a long line of him trying to use that excuse to get out of things that he has done wrong? So I don't know. You be the judge. If this comes in, which it likely won't, the jury will be the judge in this particular action as to whether or not this is just another attempt by him to say that the police department is involved in a conspiracy. And if I were the prosecution, I would try to get this in just because he's asserting the same defense here that he was there, essentially to kind of try to say, look, we don't believe him here. We shouldn't have believed him there. None of this matters. He was here making this defense on his own behalf 2 years or 4 years ago now, and it made no sense then. It still doesn't make any sense, especially given all of the evidence that we have against him at this point. Just like back then, we had the evidence coming directly from his wife that he had attempted to harm her. So, you decide. For now, I'm going to get off, and we are going to set up another live for the afternoon session, which will begin in 1 hour. So I hope to see all of you back here, Jeff, Tread, Natalie, and anybody else in the room. I do hope you'll all join me this afternoon or late afternoon for the conclusion of day 2 of this particular trial. Thank you all for joining me. For now, my name is Nathan Saunders, and this is The Legal Good.